Good morning and welcome back to the 10th Annual St. Pete Science Festival. It's our first year being virtual. If you haven't been with us, welcome. If you have been joining us throughout the morning, welcome back. My name is Allison Garrett and I work for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration here in St. Petersburg, Florida. And our next presenter, I'm very excited to introduce because she works with me. Her name is Audra Banks, and she works for NOAA as well as the Endangered Species Act Section 7 biologist in the Protected Resources Division. That's a lot of words, but she's going to explain what endangered species are to you this morning. And don't forget, underneath where you're watching Audra, there's a button. If you click that button, you may submit a question. And when she's done with her presentation, she's going to turn it back over to me, and we'll see if we can answer some of your questions. Good morning, Audra.
Good morning. Thank you, Allison. Good morning, everyone. So I'm just going to share my screen with you. Just give me 1 second. Okay. I'm sorry, just give me 1 second. Okay, here we go. Okay, can you all see my screen? Allison?
I'm looking, we're on a little bit of a delay. Give me 1 second, let me see if it pops up.
Okay.
I don't see it yet, Audra.
Okay, let me try again. Bear with me, I apologize. Okay. All right, let's try this again. Okay, this should work this time. Okay, how about now?
I see it. It looks like it's loading. There it is.
Okay. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Okay, so as Allison said, I work for NOAA, which stands for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And my job is to help protect threatened and endangered species by working with other federal agencies. And one of those agencies is the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So what do the words threatened and endangered mean? A threatened species is one that is likely to become endangered in the future. An endangered species means it is illegal to take that species. And what we mean by the word take, it's kind of a long definition, but it includes to harass, harm, pursue, hunt, shoot, wound, kill, trap, capture, collect, or attempt to do any of these things to the endangered species. So all of those things are illegal. The Endangered Species Act is a law that was passed by Congress. It was amended in 1973, and it requires federal agencies to contact NOAA, which is my office, if they're planning an activity that might have an effect on a threatened or an endangered species. So let's talk about some examples of endangered species. So in this photo, you can see there are two pictures of sea turtle hatchlings. So sea turtles are endangered species. And I want to talk about some threats to sea turtles. There are many threats to sea turtles, and we don't have time to cover all of them today, but I do want to talk about two of those threats. The first is plastic pollution. And in this picture, you can see that there's plastic floating around in the ocean. There are some sea turtle species like leatherbacks who eat jellyfish, and they eat other soft-bodied animals. And so you can see how a leatherback turtle might easily confuse plastic for a jellyfish. Okay, in this photo, there's a loggerhead sea turtle escaping from a TED. And TED stands for Turtle Excluder Device. The threat to the turtle isn't the TED. The threat is when sea turtles become entangled in shrimp nets. NOAA requires all shrimp fishermen in the United States to use TEDs so that sea turtles are able to escape if they become entangled in a shrimp net. And in this picture, you can see this is a loggerhead, as I said, and it's actually escaping from the TED, which is an opening in the net where the turtle can get out. Okay, here's another example of an endangered species. This is a small-tooth sawfish, and the red arrow is pointing to its rostrum. And you can see along the rostrum, there are little teeth, and it kind of looks like a saw, and that's why we call it a small-tooth sawfish. So where do small-tooth sawfish live? Small-tooth sawfish currently live in Florida, but their primary habitat is on the west coast of Florida in two areas. One is Charlotte Harbor, and the other is the Florida Everglades. So one threat to small-tooth sawfish is the destruction of mangrove habitat. When sawfish are young, they need red mangroves and shallow water to hide from predators until they can grow bigger. Unfortunately, we have a lot of development in Florida in the same areas that serve as nursery habitat for sawfish. Another threat to small-tooth sawfish is fishing line. And in this picture, you can see there's a red arrow, and it's pointing to some fishing line that got wrapped around the sawfish's rostrum. Another threatened species is elkhorn coral. And in this picture on the left, you can see that's my husband, and he's measuring a colony of elkhorn coral. And in the photo on the right, we can see several elkhorn coral colonies that are serving as important habitat for various species of fish. In this picture on the left, we can see that someone carelessly dropped their boat anchor on some coral, which very likely damaged the coral. And in the photo on the right, we can see pictures of coral disease. So in these pictures on the right, the part of the coral that still has color is actually the healthy tissue, and the part of the coral that shows up as white is the part that has disease. So before we move on, I'd like to pause and ask if anyone has questions. And if you do have a question, if you could please go ahead and type it into the chat.
So for everyone participating, there is a click to submit question button underneath the area where Audra is talking. If you'd like to submit that, we can ask her about marine species and their endangered status.
Thank you, Allison.
Of course.
Okay. All right, so moving on. Okay, so here are some pictures of species that were recently added to the endangered species list. And on the left, you can see a photo of a giant manta ray. And on the right is an oceanic white-tipped shark. And this is another species that was recently added to the endangered species list. It's a Brutus whale. And a fun fact about Brutus whales is that they have baleen, which means they have no teeth, and they can dive to depths of 900 feet. That means they can hold their breath for a very long time, which is impressive. Okay, here you can see it's an aerial photo of the St. Lucie nuclear power plant. This power plant is located on Hutchinson Island, which is on the Atlantic coast of Florida. And in the photo, you can see the Atlantic Ocean, which is on the right, and you can see the beach, and it's actually a nesting beach for sea turtles. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this power plant. In order to generate power, the plant uses ocean water, and the plant has 3 intake wells that are located off the beach. You can't see the wells in this picture, they're under the water. And those intake wells, they suck in the ocean water. The ocean water then travels along an intake canal, and it eventually reaches the power plant. So the problem is that sea turtles and occasionally small-tooth sawfish, which are endangered species, they're getting into the intake well along with the ocean water. So sometimes these sea turtles drown, and other times they're injured while traveling through the intake pipe that carries the ocean water. So my office is working with the power plant to figure out how to minimize the number of sea turtles that are coming into the power plant. So here are some examples of animals that have been captured at the power plant. On the left is an olive ridley sea turtle, and on the right is a small-tooth sawfish. Okay, so what happens to the endangered animals that are captured at the power plant? So in this picture, you can see the red arrow. It's pointing to a satellite tag. And this animal was actually healthy when it was captured. And so biologists were able to tag it, and they were able to release it back into the wild. But the good thing about the animal having a tag is that scientists are now able to track the animal's movements. Okay, I'm going to talk about another one of my projects. This is Fisher Island. And Fisher Island is, it's on Miami Beach, which is on the east coast of Florida. That's where I am. And for this project, they want to repair their seawall and dredge the bottom to make it deeper so that the ferry that you can see in this picture, so that the ferry is able to access the island. The problem is that there are many corals that are growing on the existing seawall, and those corals will die unless someone removes them before they start construction. So in this picture, you can see a massive star coral, which is a threatened species. And there are actually 9 colonies of massive star coral living on the seawall at Fisher Island. So NOAA is working with the Army Corps of Engineers and biologists to make sure that these corals are safely removed from the seawall before they start construction. This past August, these corals were removed from the seawall and are now being taken care of by scientists with NOAA in Miami, who are interested in learning more about corals that are able to survive in developed areas like Fisher Island. And we're very happy that these rescue corals are now in good hands. So this is a picture of my daughter and my husband in the Bahamas. And I just wanted to thank you all for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Audra, so much. I so appreciate it. I'm so lucky to get to work with some amazing scientists, and thankfully we've got some questions for you. Andrea is asking, what made you decide to study endangered species?
Well, that's a great question, Andrea. So I never really set out to study endangered species specifically. I always loved the ocean. I always was interested in the marine environment. And when I first started out with NOAA, I was actually with a different office, the Restoration Center. And I just kind of ended up in Protected Resources Division. It just, I did a few other things before I ended up here. As I said, I was with the Restoration Center, and then I worked for another part of NOAA, which was our Habitat Conservation Division. But I feel like all that experience helped me prepare for my job now in the Protected Resources Division, and it all sort of overlaps in some ways. So I guess to answer your question, I never really set out to study endangered species specifically, but I like what I do, and I enjoy working for NOAA.
Great. Bella has a question. What is the largest coral?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I'm not sure I know the answer for sure, but I can tell you about a very large coral that we have in Broward County. And so the scientific name for this coral is Orbicella favulata. And for some reason, scientists have changed it used to be Montastria favulata, and now they call it Orbicella favulata. So the nickname for this really big coral was Monster Fav. And it's a very large, a very old coral that is off of Broward County, which is the area where I live. I have never seen this coral personally. My husband has seen it, and there are many scientists that have studied it. It's an interesting coral. You can actually see growth rings in the coral where there have been changes in climate over time. But as I mentioned in one of my slides, coral disease is really a problem right now, both in the area where I live and also in some parts of the Caribbean. And so that coral has actually, it's not doing that well now. But who knows? I mean, maybe it will survive. It has survived for like thousands of years. So hopefully the whole thing won't die, but we have to keep an eye on it.
Okay, Cole has a question. Were there any endangered animals that used to be endangered but are now saved, maybe throughout your career? Have you seen anything come off the list?
I have not in the time that I've been working for NOAA, but I believe that the Florida alligator used to be an endangered species, and it has been delisted. So there have been some species that have recovered, but I haven't seen any species recover in the time that I've been with NOAA.
Okay, we'll leave that up to our young scientists to help with our work, huh?
Sounds good.
Nicole asked the question, are all ocean animals endangered?
No, good question. Not all ocean animals are endangered. So I'll give you an example. So bottlenose dolphins, they are protected by the Marine Mammal Protection Act. However, sorry guys, however, bottlenose dolphins are not an endangered species. So again, they're protected because they're a marine mammal, but they are not an endangered species.
Okay, our next question comes from Alondra. How do corals get diseases?
Okay, so scientists are still studying this, but they have some theories, and they think that it could be either one bacterium, so one type of bacteria, or it could be a host, many bacteria that are harming the coral. Just like, you know, how people get sick. Sometimes we get sick from a virus, sometimes we get sick from a bacteria. So it's similar with corals, they're an animal. So like I said, scientists don't know for sure, but right now they're thinking it's probably, it could be a bacteria that's causing the disease.
Okay, we have a question. It didn't have a name with it, but just, is there a natural predator for sawfish?
Yes, good question. Bull sharks. So when sawfish are juveniles, I don't know if you remember in my presentation, I mentioned that they need red mangroves and shallow water to hide from predators. And one of their major predators when they're young is bull sharks. So that was a good question.
Okay. Miss Romano wants to know how many corals are in one colony?
I think she's talking about like the polyps. So let me explain a little bit about coral biology, basic coral biology. So the coral itself is an animal, and it sort of looks like a very tiny sea anemone. And it's surrounded by calcium carbonate, which is the shell that protects the animal. The animal itself is soft, so it has the shell around it. And so how a colony forms is you get, and I don't know numbers, like it depends on how large the coral is. It could be thousands of these individual polyps. It could be millions if it's like a really large colony. So it really depends on the age of the coral. And then, typically the older the coral is, the larger it is.
Okay. Maurice wants to know, are there any sawfish in different colors? Are the sawfish ever different colors?
Yes, and I'm going just based on pictures that I've seen. So pictures that I've seen, it's actually one of the pictures in my presentation where I showed the rostrum, the sawfish looked darker, and that was a juvenile, which means it was a younger sawfish. But then I've also seen pictures of the adult sawfish, which are like a lighter color. So I have seen them in different colors.
Okay. I'm going to do two sort of at one time. What is your favorite part of your job? And the other part of this question is, how long have you been studying endangered species and did you go to college?
Okay, so first part, favorite part of my job is actually doing stuff like this. So you all, I didn't tell you this, but I actually want to be a teacher. So I love doing this kind of thing. I don't get to do it that often, but I do really enjoy these kinds of events, and any time that I get to teach would be the favorite part of my job. And I wish I could do it more often. And did I go to college? Was that one of them? Did I go to college?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes, I went to the University of Florida for 4 years. I actually have a bachelor's degree in sociology and a minor in environmental studies. And then I went to the University of Miami to get my master's in marine policy.
Okay.
Is there more?
All right. So that's a way to get into the work that Audra's doing. You've got a lot of questions, Audra. I'm going to keep going.
Okay.
What is I guess your favorite animal to work with?
My favorite animal. So I don't get to work with these animals directly. I actually have an office job. But I will say that on my bucket list is to see a small-tooth sawfish in the wild. I've never seen a small-tooth sawfish in the wild. I have seen one at an aquarium, which was cool, but I really want to see a small-tooth sawfish in the wild.
Okay. Another question came in that said, when you put animal tags on the animals, does it hurt them?
I have never tagged an animal, but from what I understand, it would be sort of like when you get a shot, I think you all have had shots before. So it probably hurts for like a second and then it goes away.
Okay. Jace wants to know, can corals be poisonous?
No, but so when I was saying before about how the coral animal itself is like almost like a tiny sea anemone. Mm-hmm. So they have these little tentacles, and in the tentacles are stinging cells, and they're called nematocysts. And so those stinging cells can sting their prey, but they're not harmful to humans. But as a general rule, you shouldn't be touching coral, because if you touch it, you'll feel like it's like a mucus, and that mucus is what protects it. But you really don't want to be touching coral or standing on them or anything like that, because it's not good for them. But they're not harmful to people. So, I'm sorry, there is fire coral. Let me quickly say, there is a coral that's called fire coral, and that would irritate your skin if you were to touch it. And that's why it's called fire coral, because it can irritate your skin.
Okay. We still have more questions coming in, and we'll do our best to try to get these answered by Audra and get them back to you, but I only have time for one more. So it's a great question. Athena wants to know, how do we help these animals? What can we do? And you touched on it a little bit in your presentation.
Yeah, so like I said, plastic pollution is not only bad for sea turtles, it's bad for, all marine life. So, trying to use less plastic and recycling is always good. You can do beach cleanups in your community. I know we have an annual beach cleanup every year where I live, so that's a good way to get involved, and you can, pick up trash on the beach. You can have a career in marine science. It would be a great way to, try to protect these animals.
Okay. Audra, thank you so much. Such great information. I think I've got a lot of the answers to questions that were posed, but we have a few more, and we're going to do our best, even after the festival, to try to return these to teachers and get these answers for everyone, because we know no question is not a good question. So thank you so much, Audra. We really appreciate it. And you are live at the St. Pete Science Festival. We'll be back at 12 o'clock noon.